If I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for.
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal self?
The Panther
The
48.
tribal self is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die
The
for.
family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing
I'm
to
talking
die
about
for.
tribal
The
self.
Panther 48.
I'm talking about those living, those yet unborn, and those who are the
How
ancestors.
long is your list?
So the connection with the ancestors is tied into the tribal self.
Panther 48.
What does that mean? That means that the tribal self constantly reminds us
Willing to die for.
that we don't have the
How
right
long is your
to
list?
claim independence.
The Panther 48.
Peace and power. Once again, this your Panther 48. This your brother Syke calling out of Texas. 1/3 of the Panther 48. I got my other two brothers in the Panther 48 on with me. I have brother Robert Williams, who is the chairman of the San Diego chapter of the Black Panther Party and the national chief of staff of the People's Black Panther Party, headquartered out of Atlanta. Peace and power, brother Walk.
About the people, everyone.
We have brother E, as we love to call him, our Minister of Information Emeritus, and one of the brothers who was there on the ground with us in the building of the new Black Panther Party Dallas chapter. Peace and power, brother E, calling out of Florida.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen.
And today we're going to continue on where we left off last week, or week before last. We've been building on the infrastructure of the new Black Panther Party. And today we've decided, because we got a lot of requests, we got a lot of questions in the comment section on on the last video that we dropped, with people asking questions, not only about that national manual that Brother Watt talked about. And if you haven't seen the video, go look at the last video that we dropped on the channel. There's a lot of good information given. But in that video, we dealt with a lot of history, and we dealt with a lot of founding and origins of the new Black Panther Party. In this video, we want to deal with structure and ideology. We're going to not only talk about the founding structure and ideology of the new Black Panther Party, but how that structure and that ideology evolved. And I think we talked enough about how that structure and that ideology mutated into what I think one of you brothers called a bastard mating of different ideologies that don't belong together. So we're not really going to get into that, but we're going to try to get a listening audience, especially those who constantly had questions about essentially organizing. They wanted to understand how to gain or how to get the information needed to organize in their cities. And one of the things that I left, and if I remember, I'm gonna put it in the description box on this video, Brother Ward's email address for those who was asking for the information, the paperwork, the structures. You could always contact Brother Ward at the email address that I'll have in the description box of this video. And you can see that I left it also in the comment section in the last video. But we're going to build on it. We're going to start with Brother Ward, because Brother Ward is going to kick off where the new Black Panther Party's ideology and structure was, organizational structure was when he came into the organization. Then I'm gonna take over and tell you where the ideology and structure went once we was drafted into the organization. And then E is gonna take over and tell you where it evolved into and why we felt the need to make the changes that we made in order that it could have a wider touch on a wider group of people. But Brother Ward, go ahead, brother.
All right, for this, I'm gonna share my screen. Just y'all confirm that y'all can see it here. Can y'all see the screen?
Yep.
Cool. So I want to start off by showing, and this is Brother E's favorite logo here. Where we call it the belly flopping panther. This was the original. Right. This was the original logo that we used back in 1989 for the NBPP founding out of Dallas. So I thought that was real important, just so folks have an awareness of what that logo is, if you've ever saw that. And then ultimately we ended up using, when y'all familiar with the new Black Panther Party patch, and this became the logo. But mind you, in Dallas, we rock things a little different. So we actually had the original Panther infused within the logo, as well as you also see the African continent. And we even had one that showed the development of the continent, which had it coming from the basically the south to the north. So to most folks, when you say that, that meant that the continent of Africa here was turned upside down, which in essence we refer to right side up. But that's important. Now, the thing about this is, notice also the patch says freedom of debt. So we're going to dive a little bit into the integrity of what it means to be a Panther. So, but back in the early 80s and mid 90s, the original platform was a 14-point platform. So one of the things that was really hitting the Black community hard, and you don't hear people talking much about it now, in terms of even the destruction that is still founded in terms of what happened to our Black families. But point number 2 on our platform was we wanted immediate end to illegal drug trafficking and gun running in our African and oppressed communities. We believe that the illegal drug trafficking in our African and oppressed communities contribute largely to the substandard living conditions we endure. We also believe that the sale of illegal weapons contributes to the high and rising homicide rates in our communities. We demand that the U.S. disdain any roles is playing in the sale of illegal drugs and weapons. We insist that the U.S. assist local law enforcement agencies and progressive community-based organizations in the eradication of these diseases from the African body. Now, the thing about this is you don't find this point in any other versions of the platform that I'm aware of now or even before then. And the concept behind that is the fact that, again, the craft epidemic was strong, and our Black communities were getting, hit hard with a lot of in what we call internalized hate and violence for one another. And we realized that the government was key behind that. Maxine Waters even went into a situation where she was bringing out that the CIA was involved in the spread of crack cocaine throughout the Black community, as well as gun running. So as a result of that, this was hitting Dallas real hard, as well as across the United States. So that was a key founding element within the platform that we was addressing in our community. Now, the thing about that as well is, in that period of time, the Black Panther Party, the new Black Panther Party, was heavy in social programs and trying to just entrench ourselves within the community and address some of these ills that was taking place as a result of the amount of death and violence that was happening in our communities. So with that, one of the things we get into with the platform, and again, like Brother Sykes said, if people want some of this information, I'll be more than willing to share it. Mind you, I would not be sharing the membership manual per se, but key elements and information that should be in all Panther formation structures that we feel will help aid those organizations in those developments and moving forward. So in our 14-point platform, we had those key things. And again, it was based on just breaking down the things that were impacting us more so in the community at that period of time. But one thing about this that I think is important is that we talk about freedom of debt. And to us, freedom of debt basically equals Panther ideological integrity, which refers to the consistent adherence to Black Panther core principles. It is the equality of remaining true to our convictions and values, even in the face of challenges, conflicting circumstances, or debt. Adhering to the ideological integrity can be challenging, especially when confronted with opposing viewpoints or circumstances, because a Panther may not be solid in their personal life alignments that make for a conducive environment to perform the community work and accept the revolutionary sacrifices and compromise. It requires individuals to critically evaluate their political understanding of self-determination and ensure that they are not driven by personal biases or external pressures revolving around the symptoms of oppression. And that's key that we reference the symptoms of oppression, because true ideological integrity demands intellectual honesty and a willingness to engage in introspection and self-reflection in order to grasp revolutionary suicide. Ideological integrity requires an understanding and clarity about what it is to be a Black Panther. It involves a thoughtful examination of the underlying values and principles that form the foundation of our ideology. This introspection about freedom allows us to develop a strong sense of convictions and to articulate them in a consistent and coherent manner based on foundational generational advancement, which we talked about being the key element that binds the generations of Panther formations or Panther movements and the elders to the middle generation and the youth that are forming the continued development of the Black Panther. And so that's the key element to that part of it. But in saying that, the keys to ideological integrity invoke the ability to apply principles consistently without bias. It means one should not selectively interpret or apply their beliefs based on convenience or personal gain, but instead live in a balanced and principled approach that is guided by an intact, strong moral compass for collective empowerment. Ideological integrity is not a static, crystallized concept. It requires continuous evaluation and refinement in light of new information, changing situational circumstances, and environment. Fluidity ensures ideological integrity remains relevant and responsive to the complexities of the evolving world. And one of the major things that we find is that ideological integrity is not where it should be. In the last part of this, ideological integrity also plays a crucial role in the fostering trust and credibility from the community you serve. Conversely, a lack of ideological integrity will lead to public skepticism, a breakdown in internal studies, structure, and generational decline of the Panther movement. And these are some of the reasons why we decided to bring this information forth now, because when you talk about the building of the Black Panther, going back to our 14-point platform that was used in that point in time, as well as just talking about the logos and the seal. See, the seal holds true to the integrity of what the structure should be. And so from that standpoint, this is not just something pretty and cute to put on your chest, but it's supposed to reflect, like we said, ideological integrity. That's the whole thing. So freedom or death equals that Panther ideological integrity. And these are one of the things we felt that has fallen off in terms of people's understanding and overstanding of what it means to be a Panther. So that's very important. And these were the key principles and foundations that made us do the work we did in the community. And kind of like what I said yesterday in regards to this, I'm sorry, not yesterday, last time we had our class, we dealt with moral Panther ideological integrity. We talk about a framework, which is the foundational concepts that hold up the chapter, which are rules, regulations, 10-point platform, bylaws, orders, and local objectives, and a methodology, which is a process to carry out the goals, which we call the 3 Ds, to define, develop, and defend, or our 3 Ps, which is perception, pursue, and to preserve the organizational structure, the mechanisms, our PE classes, and then our skill level training. And then after this, I'm gonna jump off. But Panther internal skill levels revolved around 6 elements. Level number 1 required to become a rank and file member, which was 6 basic classes. Now it's different depending on who's giving it, or as well as what recruits are going through. But normally we start off with 6 basic classes. Those classes are roughly between 2 and 3 hours long. And then for skill level 2, required to run service programs, standard operation procedure classes are given. Level 3, which is required to hold leadership positions at a local level, we get into the 10 kinetic operational resistance engagement leadership classes, which breaks down the aspects of mechanisms, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later here. Level number 4 required to hold a regional position, which we got into the Panther code classes, which is the kinetic operational development exercises. Level number 5 required to hold national position, and then level 6 was required to establish international relations and assist with formation of international chapters. So these are the key elements that we dealt with at that point in time. But what the Panther 48 realized is that coming off of the crack epidemic era and the things that we were dealing with within that time period, at that point, Aaron Michaels, this is before Khaled now, but at the same time, Aaron and Khaled had eventually started working together, and Khaled started kind of coming around Dallas, coming around some of the things that was going on. And what we saw is that there was a need. Now, this is before Khaled joined the organization, but yet he was still around. He hadn't been an influence on our internal operations, but he was in the picture from time to time, just so folks are aware of that. But the thing about it, as Aaron was doing more national work, he turned over the local chapter of Dallas to myself, and I became the local chairman of Dallas. Once I was the local chairman of Dallas, I recruited, and I would say drafted, Brother E and Brother Syke into the fold. When they came into the fold, there was some things that needed to be addressed by the party. And even going back further than that, when I came into the organization, one of the things that I was key in addressing was the internal conflicts of the organization, in terms of the membership being able to get along with one another and us to be able to deal with each other well enough to be able to get the work done. So my first official position was the Director of Internal Affairs, and through that I addressed basically the implementation of the policies, procedures, and how we get along as members in order to just get the work done. But from that, once I became the local chairman and Brother E and Brother Syke came into the fold, there was a lot of things that still needed to be done. And what we must realize is that the Panther formation in the Black Panther Party, specifically the new Black Panther Party, is supposed to be something that's ever evolving. So from that, I'm gonna turn it over to
Brother Ward. Just talked about when he drafted me and Ian to the party. I'm gonna give a little history real quick, just a little bit. I think I met Brother Ward in the early 90s. This is before joining the party, but in meeting Brother Ward, we first met doing music. That was first to go. And Brother Ward, being the type of brother that he is, even though we was doing music, as far as at the time, Brother Ward had a studio. Brother Ward was a producer. He was doing tracks. So I used to rent, me and the group that I was dealing with, we'd rent studio time from Brother Ward. We'd purchase tracks from Brother Ward. And so we were doing music, and being around in that environment. One of the things that Brother Ward and I'd have to bring this up, his cousin, Brother Quasar 9 Reasons, would do is they would bring up what we would call conscious knowledge now. They would bring up revolutionary ideas, concepts. We would go over books like Behold a Pale Horse and give our own commentary and thoughts to it. And this was my first time ever being around that type of environment. So that environment had a deep influence on me as we were doing that. I think this may have been somewhere around 92, 93 or something. And because of that relationship being formed, it ended up producing the relationship that I was later would develop with Brother E. Because when I made a decision to move out to Fort Worth, Brother Ward, one of the things that Brother Ward did was introduce me to Brother E and his very close friend of his that he was socializing with at the time, a brother named Third or Isaiah. I was introduced to those brothers. At the time, those brothers was operating an organization called the NANM. And I would later find out that those brothers had been NANM, mean New African Nationalist Movement at the time. And I started doing work with those brothers. And at the time, those brothers were doing things like they would do rap sessions. I remember, and I'm gonna try to make this quick because I'm going down memory lane, but I remember the first time I was invited to one of these rap sessions, I thought it was gonna be a lot of brothers standing around, passing the mic around, freestyling and rapping. That's what I thought I was going to. So when I show up and all these guys had these books and they were talking about Africa and Afrocentric thinking and revolutionary ideas and starting the police program and all this, I'm like, what the hell where are the rappers at? But anyway, to get to the point, so when I started building with those brothers, with the NANM, the New African Nationalist Movement, they had a lot of ideas and study groups. Like my first police patrol was done not with the Panther Party, but with the New African Nationalist Movement. And I believe they called that program the People's Program. And I got I believe they call that program the People's Program. Let me pull it up. So, and that I bring all that up because I think that was important. I think that those things are important because it talks about the development of my revolutionary thinking and the ideas that I was introduced to. Anyway, to fast forward to around the time when War was made chairman, Aaron Michaels stepped back. And well, first Aaron Michaels stepped up to National Minister of Defense around the time when they were getting ready to bring college in. And Brother War was made the chairman of the local chapter. And when Brother War was made chairman of the local chapter, me and E was brought, because we was already there. And we had been, we took the sideline for particular reasons. I'm not going to get into the details of what that was, but when me and E had to take the sideline for those particular reasons that we had to do that, me and E did not stop working. Matter of fact, one of the things that me and E had started building on was, y'all see that?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. This was you remember this, E?
Yeah.
Yeah, this was the concept that we started building on, called the African Night. While we was put on the sidelines, we was I ain't gonna say expelled, because one of the things that War brought back to our attention was that y'all was never expelled, y'all was never taken off the membership roster.
We were suspended.
We were suspended, that's what it was. So we were still building on revolutionary ideas. And so E and I, in that little apartment out there in Fort Worth, right next to that Taco Bell, we used to sit there and we used to go over different ideas and strategies and things that we thought could make a difference. And this is a theme that E drew. You know, E has always been, if not a minister of information, he was a minister of culture in the vein of Emory Douglas, because he was wasn't it Emory Douglas or Emory? I said the wrong name. It was Emory Douglas. Okay.
Emory Douglas.
Because he drew this. This wasn't done on he drew this, and these symbols, you know, you got the square, you got the pyramid, you got the circle. All of these things had their symbolic meaning, which I'm not about to go into, and you can see the play on the name Illuminati. You know, they say that the Illuminati's goal is to keep the people deaf, dumb, and blind, so that the Illuminati can essentially control the world, whether you believe in that concept or not. So we took it and said Africanati, because our goal was to wake people up so that African people can be who African people were meant to be. And so we started building on these ideals of the Africanati. And this was like some of the first paperwork that we was building on while we were sidelined, dealing with the concept we were building when it came to the Africanati. Now, keep in mind, all this stuff is over 20 years old, you know, and we sat down and we created the required reading list. And as y'all can see, this was the stuff that we felt like somebody just starting needed to read and have an understanding of. Malcolm X on Afro-American History, From the Broader File, From Niggas to Guys, Part 1, Survival Strategy for Africans in America by Anthony Browder, and Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. And this is important because you first have to free the mind before you can free the body. And you have to understand where your liberation has been taken from you at. You know, a lot of times we start off thinking that people have the same level of understanding that we may have with 10, 15, or 20 years in the struggle, not understanding that usually a person walking into those doors, those headquarter doors, they're walking into those doors because they know something is wrong. They just don't know exactly what it is, and they don't know how to get out of that problem. And they look into the organization to give them those answers. And that's why we started on and I don't want to call it elementary, because there's some powerful knowledge in these small books. But we started on a beginner's level. Yeah. We started on the beginner level. And so these are some of the things that we was working on when we was constructing the Africanati. And around the time we was constructing the Africanati, Brother Ward called us and said, come on back into the fold. Y'all was never expelled in the first place. Again, Brother War was still building with us, but at the time that we were sidelined, we wasn't allowed to participate in Panther activities. So, but Brother War, being who Brother War is, and Brother War can be Machiavellian at times, he would still build with us and come around us and make sure that he had soldiers on the sideline that wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. So we was building all this at the time that we were sidelined for what was it, about a year that we were sidelined, and then when we came back, 8 months, close to a year. So when we came back, the first things that we was given, we didn't come back as soldiers. We came back and said, "Oh yeah, y'all also are reorganizing the Central Committee." That was
came back and said, "Y'all still wrong."
Yeah.
So it's just showing you some of the stuff that we was working on while we was building that African ID.
Oh, hold on real quick, Psych. Not to cut you off, but I want to speak to that real quick, because I think it's real important for folks to realize that, mind you, when these two brothers were quote unquote sidelined, what they were doing is they went inside and addressed the deficiencies of the structure of the organization. Instead of them taking that time to be pissed off, to be upset in terms of emotional and not do any work, they got busy and they did more work. And mind you, the suspension aspects goes into the fact that we were battling over the ideological differences and progression that the organization should be taking. So these two brothers turned around and built and came heavy with a structure and hit us with it, hit the chapter with it when they came back and returned. And that's important that we bring that up, because a lot of people that claim they want to do this Panther work don't realize just how important it is to actually constantly fuss with yourself to the degree of actually working on an intact structure or building a structure. And so I just thought I'll make sure that people realize that, because now, one of the biggest things I deal with in terms of organizing is getting people to just even be able to get along well enough to organize together. And so here you go with the Panther 48. The fights that we had with each other are not dysfunctional fights that have to do with BS, but ideological fights, because we're about doing and providing everything that we should be providing for a movement. Because again, when we said that freedom of debt, we meant that. This was our lifestyle. This was our livelihood. This is what made us serving the people. So we took seriously what it is we supposed to be representing and be a part of. Go ahead.
And just to throw this on in there to emphasize that shit, when we'll say fight, we're not talking about a bunch of cats with books and ideas yelling at each other, though we did do that. It was some gangster shit. So there was some gangsters in the fucking party, and motherfuckers wasn't getting along for a hot second, and so we had to part ways for a minute. So it was an actual dramatic time period, like very volatile, but all that shit got overcome because, like Ward said, I know for me in sight, it was like, oh, okay. So we went back and we were determined when we came back, I guess in the back of our minds, we knew we were coming back, but we knew we were gonna come back with both barrels loaded. And I believe it was around that time that we actually took the party to court. I don't know if you remember that. We actually did a class in that bookstore and set everything up with evidence and, did it as if we were in court, bringing the party up on charges and addressed, the leadership of the party and took them to task. So it was some in your face, like, no, fuck that shit. We're going to do it this way. And we're going to choke the shit out of each other until we figure this shit out. So yeah, just to kind of emphasize, this wasn't just some eggheads yelling and shit. This was some actual shit.
Yeah, true indeed. And the funny thing about it, when we got our point across, I wasn't thinking that when we came back, we was gonna be put in those leadership positions. We were just trying to tell the leadership that this is what y'all need to do. So when they brought us back, the leadership said, if this is what we need to do, and y'all know it so well, here, you're gonna be this, you're gonna be this, let's implement it. And it kind of put us on the spot, because like I say, when I was made chief of staff, and Brother E was made MOI, Minister of Information. And then we said on the last show, if you know our personalities, you probably know why we was given those positions. And one of the first things that I had to do was I had to seek counsel from the person that was the chief of staff before me, who just happened to be Brother David Foreman. He was the chief of staff for the Dallas chapter of the New Black Panther Party before I was. But he had been raised to National Minister of Defense, which he, as he told us, I'm going to be here in these meetings, but I'm national, so I'm not going to try to control anything that's going on in the local meeting. This is for y'all to control, because as we said in the last show, we believed in local autonomy. And so just because David Foreman was National Minister of Defense didn't give him the power to run the local chapter. And out of respect, he stepped back. He was still there. He was right there, but he stepped back and he let us take the steering wheel of the party. And I remember one of the things that he told me, and again, I say, if you understand the personalities, I asked him, how do you do the job of a chief of staff? And he told me, you're already doing it. The same way you're constantly calling us to task, making sure everybody's doing the job they're supposed to be doing. He said, that's all it is. That's why we chose you to do the job, because you're already doing it. So just basically be confident in it and do the job. And one of the things that I did, because I'm one of my flaws is I'm damn near a perfectionist. So I started studying Army and military organizing. I wanted to understand what the chief of staff did in the military. I wanted to understand how that structure was organized and that staff was organized. Now, one of the things I'm gonna show, because I'm not about to get into too much detail on it, but I'm gonna show this screen again. I meant to show this. Can y'all see that?
Yeah.
I meant to show this when I talked about the NANM, because this is one of the ways that the NANM had organized their manual. They had organized their manual based off the 9 areas of human activity, and everything in the manual and every activity that the NANM, the New African Nationalist Movement, and it's good to say this, that the New African Nationalist Movement was dissolved and became New Black Panther Party. So the members that the NANM became New Black Panther Party. And so back to the point, and many of the ideas that those brothers had in the NANM came into the New Black Panther Party. So we basically melded all this stuff together. But when I came into the and I guess I need to show this. Let me grab something right quick. I'm going to show y'all something else before I get into that. Hold on, y'all. Give me one hot second. So when I came into the position of chief of staff, one of the first things that I started doing was, and this is a rough draft drawing of what it looked like when I presented it to the organization. But one of the first things that I started doing was, one, I found out what a chief of staff was and what a chief of staff's job was. So I started doing that job, and I started kind of restructuring our organization. And that's when the mechanism structure was introduced. So in the organizational structure, if you see, y'all see that screen, right?
Yeah. In
the organizational structure, so I said, boom, okay, the chairman, so quote unquote, so to speak, is basically at the head of the chapter, at the top of the chapter. But the reason for that is because of the Commission of Liberation. The chairman is commissioned. And what the Commission of Liberation is, it is an order given to the chairman to liberate the area that the chairman is in. That's what the Commission of Liberation is. The chairman does this job by organizing a Black Panther chapter in his area to assist with that commission. The Commission of Liberation is to liberate the Black community in the area that particular chairman is in. And the only way that the chairman can do that, because one man can't do it, one woman can't do it. So the chairman has to create an organization to assist in that commission. That organization is the New Black, was at that time the New Black Panther Party, and the Central Committee became an extension of the chairman. because the Central Committee had people on it that represented the different areas that the chairman needed to tackle in their community. The chief of staff is the executive officer of the Central Committee, or the one who basically runs the Central Committee for the church. The Central Committee then, if you look at this and notice this, the Central Committee then has an extension of itself into the mechanism. The mechanism ideal is at that time, and this is, we talking what, 1996, somewhere around there, 1998, probably 96, 98, somewhere around there. But
I think 96.
But the mechanism structure represented the four mechanisms that at the time I felt that the party would have to deal with if it was going to be effective in this area of involvement in the community that it's involved in. And that's the defense mechanism, the information mechanism, the economic mechanism, and the community mechanism. And each of these mechanisms had a person, a minister at the head of the defense mechanism. It was the minister of defense. And the defense mechanism, to break it down real, try to make it concise, but to try to give a little clarity to it. Anybody that came into the party that wanted to operate from the perspective of defense, of defending and securing the headquarters, protecting the community, patrolling the police, any of those activities that the third development dealt with from the Black Panther Party for self-defense perspective would automatically fall under the defense mechanism. And some of those soldiers that would operate under the defense mechanism would be the field marshal, the head of security, things like this, but I'll go into that in a minute. Information mechanism. Again, I think it's self-explanatory, but the information mechanism dealt with the education, took full control of the political education of the party, but not just political education, because when he was made Minister of Information, he stressed culture. So we changed the name from PE to PCE, political cultural education. And the Minister of Information job was not only to educate and teach the members in the party, but to create programs to teach and educate the members of the Black community as a whole, because proper education always corrects errors. We understood that we had to create things like, at the time, keep in mind, wasn't no YouTube, wasn't no social media. So at the time, one of our greatest ways of getting the message out to people was by creating newsletters. Create newsletters, our Thursday night political education class meetings, which was usually ran by the MOI. And then there were people that would operate under the information mechanisms. Minister of Finance, I'm gonna get into that, and I'm gonna show you a few things in a minute about those. But the Minister of Finance dealt with the economic mechanism. And no matter what you think, a chapter, a family, an organization cannot run without finance. So it's the Minister of Finance's job to not only secure those finances, but to teach the members how to secure finances in their personal life and how to deal with the needs and the responsibilities of the chapter itself. And then for the first time ever in Panther history, the Community Liaison Office, CLO, was created. And it's simply because we understood something. We understood that we didn't want the Panther to stand as some kind of elite soldier marching through the Black community. So we wanted to create programs that allowed the Panther chapter to integrate into the community, and the community to integrate into the chapter. So those people that wanted to deal with community organizing, protesting, hell, even simple things as throwing barbecues in the community would go under the community mechanism. So we saw this as anybody that came into the chapter, they would operate under one of these mechanisms. This would be their, so to speak, their squadron, so to speak. They would operate under one of these mechanisms. And under the mechanism structure was something that was called the echelon organizational structure. And these were posts, as we said then. This is not your duty. This is not, as we talked about Malik and Dr. Khalid holding these positions for a lifetime. This was a post that you was given. There was a time that I may have been given a post on the roof of a bookstore where a national meeting was taking place. That doesn't mean that I would stay on that post for the next 10 years. I was responsible for holding that post for only 2 hours. But as I held it with a complete understanding of what it was that I was meant to do, and with full respect for that position. So that's what we mean by post. So we didn't necessarily call them positions, we call them posts. You had a post as a field marshal, you had a post as an MOI, you had a post, and you're supposed to hold that post down to your greatest and your best ability. But and I can't remember, and I don't have the paperwork, but there was a lot of different posts that fell up under the echelon organizational structure that helped the mechanisms to function. Now I'm gonna show y'all this before I get ready to pass this. Before I get ready to pass this on to Brother E, I'm gonna show y'all this. Let's see. No, that ain't the one. Which I do want to show that in a minute. So let's look at this. Okay, here it goes. Here it goes. All right, I'm gonna share this screen again, y'all. I keep stopping sharing because I don't want y'all to see the wrong stuff on there. All right. All right. Example. Here's the paperwork that was passed out when the mechanism structure was created. Then these was the responsibilities that was expected of the Minister of Finance. It says that the finance officer is the special staff officer responsible for coordinating and providing finance services to the party. The MOF is also responsible for all party financial responsibilities. Besides the common staff responsibility, the MOF specific responsibilities are as follows. 1, provide finance policy and technical guidance. 2, supervise the disbursement of funds. So it was the MOF's responsibility to disperse the chapter's funds to where they needed to go. That's headquarters, that's trips, whatever it was. Performs party funds accounting. Advise the staff on current economic situation, fundraising ideas, and the availability and status of banking facilities. Sets up a justice fund for party personnel legal needs within the limitation of party responsibility and capability. 6, provides bi-weekly financial report to the staff, because you got to understand in a chapter, members are paying dues. So the Minister of Finance allows the membership to know where that money is going and how it's being utilized. 7, accepts and documents all dues, donations, and profits made from party expenditures. 8, maintains all party financial responsibility. 9, provides headquarters with job listings for unemployed members. Because again, I said earlier, you don't want a person that says that they're about the liberation and upliftment of the people, and they can't even liberate and uplift their own condition. One of the primary reasons that people have relationship problems is money, it's finances. So that's one of the things that we were stressing for our members to stay financially productive. I mean, ideally, we all want to free ourselves from a job so that we can do this community work more. And I ain't supposed to read the rest of it. Community liaison officer. I'm gonna show you this. As I said, the first time that we created this title, this position, this post, was the first time that in Panther history that this post had ever been heard of. And the very first person that this post that was given the responsibility to hold this post was a brother that we had in the chapter named Justice Ali. But anyway, the CLO is the contact or inner communication maintained between the new Black Panther Party and elements of the Black community to ensure mutual understanding and unity of purpose. The CLO helps to bridge the gap between the people and their liberation army through direct communications and proactivity. Some of the primary responsibilities of the CLO are as follows. 1, planning and implementation of recruitment programs. 2, creates and organizes community service programs. A sub A is having civilians assist the party in field and office activities. B, for the party's most needed services in the community. 3, represents the party to the grassroots and to the members of neighborhood organizations. Gang, quote unquote gang. 4, ensure. Now look at that. And look at that. That's important because you got to understand that in just about any Black community, you're going to have what can be considered a neighborhood tribe or a gang. And you got to allow those groups to know that we're not there trying to take their place. We're there trying to educate and build. And probably one of the most successful relationships that we had as Panther members was with the Truman Street Bloods in Fort Worth. We connected with those brothers and with the leadership of that group and they saw us as a resource, and they saw us as elders and big brothers. And one of the OGs, his name was well, I ain't gonna speak the brother's name, but everybody know who essentially I want to say ran Truman Street in the mid to late 90s. That's who it was, and that person put out an edict throughout Fort Worth that nobody was to bring harm to a Panther. And if anybody attempted to go to war against a Panther, then they was going to war against him. And so it gave the Panther Party walks throughout all communities in Fort Worth. And that's why things like that is important, because we had a relationship with these groups that understood that our only goal was to better the community itself and supervise all activities that the party implements in the Black community, and 6, submits a written report to the EXO, which is the Chief of Staff, on party productivity. This should be current projects being worked on by your Pacific office and basic activities for the promotion of revolutionary maturity. So these are the things that we started implementing as far as the party structure, the organizational structure. And another thing, and I'm going to get ready to pass to Brother E, not trying to be so long-winded, but another thing that we worked on, and we worked on this as far as, I'm gonna share this screen again just so people can see where it started going to. But we worked on this before we came back to the organization, and so we just started implementing many of those things. And it was called the ideology, which E is going to get into in much detail in a minute. But this just shows where that structure, I showed y'all the simple level of that structure. It shows you where that structure went to, how it evolved. As War keeps saying that the new Black Panther Party was always meant to be a living thing. It wasn't meant to be stuck in the mire. It wasn't meant to be stuck in a crystallized state of ideas. So we constantly developed and build on those things. And many things, like this is one of the things that Ian and I was talking about, exploding the myths. Many of the myths and false ideas that they had about what a Panther was. So we said, instead of going at it preaching, we'll just explode the myth. The myth, the new Black Panther Party are racist. The truth, we broke it down. The myth, the new Black Panther Party is anti-white. The truth, we broke it down. And this is one of the things that Brother War implemented and brought to the party: skills of a leader and the skills of a soldier. And these are things that we actually taught classes on. And I actually utilized this later, War, when I was on vacation, as he liked to call it. And I would turn each of these into classes on their own. We actually, the brothers in prison, they had to memorize all of these and be able to quote them from the top of their head. And we turned each of these into classes to understand what does this mean. And we passed that question around and built on it. The skills of a leader and the skills of a soldier. We built on this thing. This is what I was looking for a while ago, when I said one of the first activities that I participated in with the NANM, the New African Nationalist Movement, was the police patrols. And those police patrols that the Panther Party, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, was known for. The first time I participated in it was not in a Panther organization. It was in the New African Nationalist Movement, which was kind of like a branch of a Panther organization, because the New African Nationalist Movement had a deep level of respect and love for the Panther movement as a whole. That's why the New African National Movement ended up going into the new Black Panther Party. But and I'm gonna say this, and then I'm through, and I'm gonna pass it to E. So one of the things that E and I was working on was ideology, was trying to understand what ideology, what that was, and what that should look like to the people. So we presented, and as I say, E is going to get into deeper detail of it and break down a deeper understanding of it. But originally, the rough draft that we presented, we took. We feel like we didn't need to invent the wheel. We feel like the answers was already there. The problem is that we can sometimes be so egotistical or so limited in our understanding that we think our narrow view is the only answer. So we went and got all the views: Pan-Africanism, Black nationalism, Black liberation theology, African communalism, which is essentially Ujamaa and Ujima collected together. That's collective working responsibility and cooperative economics, which comes together to make African communalism, Afrocentricity, and these things created the Black Power ideology as they came together, as they kind of like Voltron, as they merged together, not one being more important than the other, but all being necessary. And I know that some, and I need to explain this before I pass it to E. When you hear Black liberation theology, you know where that came from. You know what that meant. We didn't mean it, and we mean it in the sense of what the words mean, what the words themselves mean, not what the political, what that religious philosophy meant, but what the words meant. We're saying that anywhere Black people see the need to participate in a theology, then that theology needs to be one of liberation and not slavery. That theology needs to be one with an African-centered worldview, and not as us praising a whole nother group of people trying to learn Arabic or trying to learn Hebrew or trying to learn whatever language. Because one of the things you got to understand is that religion is nothing more than the deification of culture. And if you accept a religion that is not culturally, that is not historically, culturally found within you, then you'll find yourself deifying or praising somebody else's culture. So when we said Black liberation theology, we were saying that when you practice theology, you practice it in a way that Black people have always practiced anything that we practice, and that's with that Black flavor into it. And when you practice it in a way to liberate you, that's what we were saying with that. But with that said, I'm gonna pass it to E, because now E is gonna give you an evolution of this structure and this ideology.
Yeah, we can see it.
Looks like I found mine too. Now, you know, for a long time, because remember, and this actually goes into the ideology and I guess how it developed and whatnot. When me and you was away, well, once we started building, because, you know, I ran toward the African Liberation Day thing in Arlington, and we started building there. And I think this is the timeline, but, you know, I spent the past 20 years trying to forget all this shit, but here it is in my face again. And then we started building once war introduces. We pretty much built consistently from then on until you decided to relocate and shit. The African Nati, if my memory serves, was actually supposed to be like the Illuminati. It was going to be hush hush. You know, we never really displayed it, made war privy to it. It was our shit. I don't know if war even ever saw this. You know, what time when he actually finally saw this artwork and whatnot.
I think today. No, are you seen it before?
Actually, no. And I'm going to tell y'all something that y'all probably don't know about that.
You don't be an ass.
The African Nati is actually where I started developing what I call the trifactor that I teach now to Panthers. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, look at her. Oh, we hit him from the roof down. Shit. But yeah, the African Nati, so it grew out of me and Syke building, not only he and I, but our children were starting to grow up together and develop relationships. So it was coming from a place of, because our perspective on it was that we were building a family, whether it was with the party or outside the party, whatever the actual organization was, it was going to be based around family values that we wanted to expand, you know, amongst one another, but then also with our children and into the community. And so that played a large part growing into the development of the ideology, because we recognized that there was nothing there. The ideology of the party, when we got there, and let me say, and I wish I still had those papers. Man, I wish I still had those papers. Those would be like classic collected items for me. But when y'all say that me and Syke were drafted into the party, that's exactly what it was. Me and Syke never showed up and said, hey, we'd like to join the party. That never happened. Ward told us, hey, I need y'all to join. Here's the paperwork. You know, essentially, I don't remember the exact conversation, but essentially, here's y'all paperwork. Y'all have now been drafted. You in the party. Oh, and a little bit later, okay, E, you're going to be the MOI, and Syke, you the chief staff. And me and Syke both, you know, we kind of talked about it. Like, we want to do this shit? Are we gonna commit to this? Because we were both the type that once we say we're going to do it, we go all in and get an emotional attachment to it, and this is our baby, and now we gotta, you know, there's no turning back. This is the shit. So we took this shit real seriously. And I know war, and I tease him about it over the years, but the reality of it is, there's another 3 of us want to be in no fucking leadership position. I was forced in a position of being a chairman for a little while. That ain't work out too well, but none of us sought out wanting to be in leadership positions, and that's probably the best part of our relationship and our experience, and what we were able to add to the party over the years was the fact that we had no personal agenda. We had no personal ambition. We weren't trying to climb the steps and become the next national chief of whatever, or national spokesperson, and none of that bullshit. We wanted to do the work. We wanted to make it different. We were the cats that were happy in the back, doing what we needed to do, going to bed at night knowing that we did everything that we could do for that day. So there was never any ambition as a rider, so to speak, to fill any of those positions. They were thrust the fuck on. Just the way War was told, okay, you're the chairman now. Syke and I were told, okay, y'all are members, and this is what y'all need to be doing. So yeah, and like I said, I think that's the best part of what our experience has been. Y'all pulling out old paperwork. I found a couple of things. There go that Panther up there, War with the right side up Africa that pissed everybody off so much for a little while. I still don't. I get it. I understand, but I can't relate to being pissed off, because it shit's turned the right side up. But it's whatever. But it's a concept that came out of my background. Syke was a thug. War. He's draped in mystery. We don't know where the fuck War came from. He just popped up in the hood one day, doing some hood shit with a book in his hand. I don't know where the fuck this fucking Shaolin cat came from, but I guess I still am the squarest of the trifecta of the 48 of the 3 of us, because my background was college, with books. I read growing up, mom's was a hippie, so I was always aware of activist type shit. But as far as the black shit, I went in through by the means of books and sitting down and having conversations and listening to elders speak about certain concepts and whatnot. And so it was just a natural thing for me to fall into their directions. In fact, even on this is just a flyer that was given out. That picture, by the way, is Brother Devin out of Fort Worth. He's an artist that, for me, was like my hero or whoever as far as artwork. I always want to be able to do artwork like him, but the way his mind works and the things he could do with the pencil and with Illustrator and other shit was just mind-blowing to me. But that's just one of his doodles. That ain't one of his real pieces of art, but that's just one of his doodles that he let me have. But even on flyers that we handed out to people about some of the issues that we need to talk about, for me, because I put this together, it's got sources down the bottom, because I was trained to always include your sources to direct people to the whose authority you're saying what you have to say. And excuse the notes and whatnot, but shit, it was a growth process. And then there was another one. Yeah. So again, the mission of the NBPP, the party, when we came in, let's just be real, there was no ideology. What the ideology that was there was a survival ideology that people brought into the party with them. There was nothing really growth oriented. It was Black culture as we understood it at that time. That was the ideology. We need to get free. It was more of a rebellious ideology than it was the foundational building blocks to move into something. So the ideology was very narrow in scope and undefined. It was not well defined at all. And I think that had a lot to do with the fact that cats like Aaron and even David were more action oriented and doing something, getting out of there and whatnot. Whereas we came in, there was a little bit more of a balance going into the intellectual or whatever you want to call it side of it, as well as, because one of the things that we've always agreed upon was the need for, to rectify that split that came after Malcolm with the US organization and the Panther Party, one being boots on the ground, one being culture or the brainiacs or whatnot, bringing those back together. And so that was always an underlying current for us, was that we needed to reunite those halves that Malcolm leftists that was kind of put out there, but it was undeveloped even then, and folks went to war over it and battling and all of the nonsense that came behind it. And so I think this was a natural progression of it. And again, there's the belly flop on top of the Africa. And again, yeah, we fought about that logo again because it, for me, expresses the ideology, you know, and the power and the direction and the roots and all the things that go along with it.
And see, let me say this. I ain't gonna take too long, but that's proof of why the cultural aspect of the political education was necessary. Because when people see that, they think upside down Africa, not truly understanding how worldview shapes the way you see reality. Because what we've been given is a world that was actually turned upside down in order to put Europe on the top. And that's the way we see the map now. A world that was turned upside down as far as the map goes to put Europe on the top and to make Europe look bigger than what it really is. When in reality, the world was flipped the other way around, or we viewed the world from a different perspective with Europe on the bottom. And people that don't know that and don't know that information would see that and be like, oh, he's turning Africa upside down. Not understanding that we're trying to put Africa back in the right place. But go ahead, brother E.
Word. And so, you know, so yeah, the conversations and whatnot, and I don't, to be honest with you, I don't remember most of the conversations and events and whatnot. I truly just don't remember that shit. I just remember the concepts and the principles and all of those things that grew out of it, which I guess is the most important. Now, mind you, once again, this is the development of the structure, the development of the membership, and the development of the ideology. Sans, that's a Latin word that means without Khalid Muhammad. Because again, though Khalid came in right after this, we were already putting this in place, and he added zero to those concepts and ideas and the structure and the development of people. I think people need to understand that Khalid was a motivator. He was a mover. He could pop those lyrics like the best rhyme sayer ever, but he was not an organizer. He was not a builder. He was not somebody that you would go to develop your structure. And that's something that gets lost, particularly amongst our people, because we get this Messiah complex and we put up on a pedestal. I love Khalid. I was the cat that took the bulletproof vest, and I think we mentioned this before. Our approach at that time to someone trying to get in and say hurt Khalid when he came to town. Our approach was that, our attitude was that you can't stop somebody that's really bent on hurting somebody. You can't stop. Somebody's going to get in at some point in time. And so our attitude was, okay, we're going to give you that first shot, but you better make it your best shot, because everybody else on the party is going to collapse on you and you're done. So in order to kind of guard against that, one cat was given a bulletproof vest, no weapon. Say Khalid came to town, this particular member will get the bulletproof vest, no weapon, and his sole purpose and responsibility was to take a bullet, period. Take the bullet, get the hell out the way so everybody else in the party could do their job of mobbing this dude, whoever tried to fire the bullet. And 9 times out of 10, when Khalid came, I was the dude with the bulletproof, no pistol, waiting to take a bullet. So, and this is not to be braggadocious, but this is to tell people that this is not out of hate, out of, I don't like Khalid, or, we're trying to bring down Khalid's name. Like, that's not what it is. This is just the truth and the matter of fact. Again, we were there. We did this. This is not something we heard from somebody or some trash ass book on the Amazon. We were fucking there. We participated. We directed a lot of it. And these are the things that have resulted from it. That's just the truth. If it hurts your feelings, fuck it, it hurts your feelings. I don't really care. This is what it is, period. If you want to know how the party developed, who built it, you're looking at it. Who put this shit together? We did. Bottom line, Aaron and David were part of the first iteration, the founding of the party. They stepped out of the way and became more of a consultant figure. They were our elders. Like brother was saying earlier, they were present at the meetings, but they didn't interfere. We would talk to them, they would express their opinion, but when it came time to make decisions, we did that. And that's just the way it was. And so we took over, and these are the things that grew out of that. So again, this is without Khalid. This is damn sure without Malik, because he damn sure didn't add anything to the development of the party. If anything, fanned the flames and made the shit worse. So that everybody thinks, oh, Khalid started the NBPP. That's not true at all. It's not fucking true. He didn't found it. He didn't develop it. He didn't grow it. All he did was collude the issue. His presence brought in an element that we didn't want to have to deal with at all. And me and Syke, I know we argued and fussed and yelled that this shit was going to happen, that this was going to become a baby nation of Islam and everybody's going to be following Khalid, and we weren't going to get any work done, to the point that it made me sick to walk into a Panther meeting of some kind and have them start off with Allahu Akbar and all of this shit. It felt like church all over again, church with guns. So we were not, there were several of us that felt like this is going to be a problem, and it was. But again, love Khalid, but I recognize Khalid's presence fucked our shit up. That being said, so there are 4 isms. Well, there are 5 isms. 4 of them are talked about, and they go in a progressive nature. The most fundamental recognition that we are a part of the same group is the visual recognition. On the most basic level, we are connected because of our skin, the thickness of our noses, our lips, all of those types of things. Something that the most uneducated person in the country can recognize. We look alike. So there are some shared commonalities that we can build on. And on this, and I'll show you the whole thing in a minute, but on this particular handout and the breakdown, each of the isms, Black nationalism being the first, also corresponds with a particular element, because there became this need in the growth to connect these ideas with something that was more than even the idea itself. Not sure how to explain that quite yet, how to put it, but that's essentially what was going on, and that's why the is there behind the in the parentheses, because that was the connection. This is our most basic and fundamental. We stand on the earth. We stand on our blackness. This is the building ground. And Malcolm X was the greatest proponent, and is most often in my head associated with Black nationalism. That's something that most people that have studied Malcolm to any degree are able to identify with, is his stance on Black nationalism. And I don't want to go over each of the ideologies. Right? I think that's another show. The next one, and again, this is in order. It's not linear, but it is an order. And I should have put some together with it being in a linear order so people could grab onto it. But the next growth stage in terms of the ideology, and this is all growth intended. And again, it's a process and feeds into the development of. So Pan-Africanism, where Black nationalism was a recognition visually as the most fundamental level, Pan-Africanism takes our recognition of our interconnectedness to a level that you can't see. Though I've never seen all the sisters and brothers in Africa, I know that we're one people. I know that regardless of the boundaries, the artificial boundaries that Europeans set up, regardless of the geography of where we're located, whether it's New York or Compton or Kenya or Nigeria or wherever, we are all one people. We are all the same people drawing from the same ideas and values. And all you have to do, in fact, there was an interesting article I came across, a news story about how Haiti had been a part of the African Union for several years as an observer. Well, not too long ago, they applied for full membership to be a part of the African Union. And at first it looked like they were going to get it, but they were turned down, unfortunately. And I don't want to go into the reasons, but my point is, if you got dropped off in the middle of Haiti and didn't know that you were in Haiti, you would be hard pressed to find the differences between Haiti and your average city in Africa, because of the way that people dress, because of the food, because of the way that people interact and whatnot. Haiti considers itself a small African country, which is why they wanted to gain membership in the African Union. This is a part of, Marcus Garvey or Kwame Ture, who developed the ideas more profoundly and took them, in the natural growth progression. Was the idea that though Haitians, for the most part, speak French. Matter of fact, shit Malcolm talked about. Though, we might come from different parts of the world, different parts of the country, we're all still the same people. And that's associated with water. So you're moving from the earth to the water, which is a more fluid, more moving, more broadly encompassing, because while the earth is fixed in a location, fixed in a spot underneath your feet, Pan-Africanism flows like water and is able to move, whether it's flowing through a river or it's evaporating into the sky and then falling in a totally different place. That water is able to touch and to reach far beyond what it is it initially or originally came from. So that's its association with Pan-Africanism is water. Next is what Sight kind of touched on a little while ago, which is Black liberation theology. James Cone is often considered the father of Black liberation or Black liberation theology. And it's associated with air because we're starting to get into the more spiritual, more ethereal, less, the more esoteric. You can't touch it. Whereas Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism, there's a physical aspect to it. When you start talking about liberation theology and theology period, you're talking about something that's beyond the physical completely, and that's our concept of our relationship to the universe. And I don't want to go into religion, spirituality, all that too awful much. But in the book, the Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams, he mentions in there how all African spiritual systems are essentially the same. We vary only in the way that we express them. So, and a lot of times folks will attempt to link the Nation of Islam and their brand of Islam and call it Black liberation theology, but it is not. Just for a single reason, just to pick one of many, but just the language that it uses. Arabic is not an African language. That is the oppressor's language. That is somebody else's way of communicating. And it's been said that if God cannot speak to you in your own language, it's not your God. And what we've talked about many a times is on this channel is how language and how words affect our perceptions. So having to learn another language and their definitions of reality and their definitions of God and our relationship to the universe is going to affect our perception of God, the universe, and therefore ourselves. To put it more succinctly, if instead of Moses being somebody way over in Egypt, they did something for some supposedly enslaved, whoever they were, and let my people go and all of that, for someone who's building on Black liberation theology, Moses becomes Harriet Tubman, who freed her people, parted the seas, and walked them out of the slavery into the promised land. So our religious relationship, our relationship with God, whether it's more spiritual, whether it's religion, whatever it is, there's a need for it to reflect our experience. If God is not rooting for you to overcome your oppressor by any means necessary, then that can't possibly be your God. Why would your God root for the other team? Makes absolutely no sense. So again, Black liberation theology and air. The fourth of the isms is African-centered thought. They used to call it Afrocentricity, but the idea, they moved it away, is Afro is a hairstyle. And that's one thing that they always try to do, is try to tie us to some fad or something in our naming, Afro-American, Afrocentricity. But what's really being said is essentially, and the element that it's associated with is fire. Because again, we've moved from the esoteric getting into the air, the less being able to hold on to it. The fire is even more so that, especially in the regards to that in reference to the idea that fire is a cleansing, fire is a rebirth. And it's at this point that we really have gone through the necessarily repositioning of our mindset that we can start applying it to global, outside of what might be a black topic, or outside of Africa, looking at other continents and other regions and our relationship to them. And one of those things is, I think, best expressed in just this picture when you referenced it a while ago, with the continent of Africa, quote unquote, upside down. The way I came across this was Nile Valley Contribution to Civilization by Anthony Browder. Typically, civilizations will be, when they start building up next to a river, they will move and grow in the direction that river runs. So it comes from upriver to downriver. Well, the Nile River runs from here and flows that way towards the quote unquote top of the continent. So our civilizations move from here this way. And the reason that that's significant is that if civilization, or what they recognize as civilization, started and grew this way, if it started down here, that's just that much more evidence, or much more points us in the direction of where humanity and the elements of civilization, and even the definitions, because the definitions that we use for civilization in this society are based around, what white folk consider the elements of civilization. But repositioning the continent of Africa so that, again, it puts the brown continents on the top of the globe, and the white continents, and let's face it, whether it's France, Britain, Germany, the US, all of these are northern, primarily northern countries, and they're white. And there's a reason that they have the brown countries in the quote unquote bottom. But if you're out in space looking at the earth, there is no up and down. So rather than continue to put them in the place of position above us, we wanted to flip it and turn and put ourselves in a position of authority, and particularly when it comes to our own reality. And so what African-centered thought is simply taking control of our own narrative. Are we the journalist? Are we the journal or the journalist? Are we the ones being written about, or are we the ones writing it? Are we the ones determining what is remembered about us, or do we leave that to the hands of the oppressor? And once we get to this point where we're talking about African-centered thought, we were able to take those other elements and apply them to that perspective. We're able to apply them to taking control of a narrative, so that the enslavement of African folks, the Ma'afa, is not left to the hands of the oppressor to explain that it was a peculiar institution, I've heard it called, or an economic endeavor or whatnot. One of the things, what's his name, Thomas Sowell and others, and Thomas Sowell's very, very well read and very intelligent, but when we bring up slavery in this country, one of the things they like to throw out is, well, slavery existed, everywhere. Slavery's been something that's happened for thousands of years, as long as people have been on the earth. And that's fine. That's all well and good. But we're not talking about history that's happened to somebody else. We're not talking about slavery that's happened all over the world. We're talking about the enslavement and oppression of our people in this country by those folks. And that's the narrative we have to work from. That this is something that happened, that has been a part of our existence, and this is the way that it's affected us. It's so much so that we can't even have a conversation about the long-term effects of one generation being essentially completely disconnected from all the other generations. When you have males and females that are forced to mate, have children, and those children are spread out everywhere. I mean, cats with 4, 5, 6 baby mamas, when in reality, back in so-called slave days, that was the regular, because master was taking his bull to go around and mate with these different women. So he's got all of these babies' mamas that he's not able to address and to be a part of. But we can't connect those dots unless we begin to understand the process. And so looking at it from that perspective all over the world, because the same shit happens in wherever these folks have gone. So let me come back out. So this is essentially the entirety of the handout that kind of breaks down the growth of the ideology. And like I said, it's in a particular order. And most people, I think, would grab this and maybe read Black liberation theology and go over to Pan-Africanism, Black nationalism, and down to African-centered thought, reading it in a logically left to right, top to bottom type of approach. But it was intentionally put together like this because if you connect the isms, if you connect each box in its proper order, it goes from Black nationalism, just as we did it, from Black nationalism, earth, Pan-Africanism, water, over to Black liberation theology, air, down to African-centered thought, fire. And if you extend that and continue it higher to the fifth ism, because you can see it says the 5 isms, though there are only 4 listed, there is the unspoken, completely intangible idea that connects all of this. So again, Black nationalism here, and if you follow the cursor, if you can see it and trace the shape that I'm making with it, it goes from here, down to here, and then back up. And this is where that 5th element resides. And this is the idea, and we don't really ever talk about it a lot, but it's the idea, and this was the most significant of the isms, it is the glue that holds all of these together. It is what makes all of these work in tandem the way they're supposed to work. Sometimes some folks talk about it, I've even referenced it as a guerrilla mentality, because it's the understanding that all of these must flow and be fluid and must work together in their proper place. There is no one ideology that's going to address every need of the people. It's just not going to happen. And that's one of the things that goes down, especially you get a religious organization, college, that is stuck in a particular ideology or principle. They end up defending that principle, even though that principle may not be what the people need at that particular time. So again, one more again, Black nationalism, earth, Pan-Africanism, water, Black liberation theology, air, down to fire, African-centered thought. And if you extend it and keep it going, it's actually a star. If you can follow that from here to here to here to here and back up, it outlines a star of types. Again, in reference to something that's more etheric and something we don't talk about because most folks are not prepared for that. But that 5th element, go watch the movie because they talked about it in a way. But that 5th element being that glue which is actually the opposite. It's not glue. It's that flow that connects the other 4 isms together. And so that was, again, like I said, that was the most important element because it allowed us to address various issues and various topics from different points of view. It allows us to not get into a conversation or a debate or an argument with somebody. They're not going to be able to pin us down and dog out Black nationalism, because I'm not a Black nationalist. I'm also Pan-Africanist. So I'm into African-centered thought. So we're able to move and bob and weave and not get caught up like so many other organizations get caught up.
Walt, can you talk a little bit into your why you saw it necessary to try to expand it, this same structure and this ideology nationally, and what took place with that?
Well, the thing with that is, just keep in mind, the deal is what we were doing in Dallas is we were setting adding to the legacy of what it means to be a Panther. We was improving and building above the original foundation that was given to us. And naturally, what all Panthers are supposed to do is to continue to evolve the structure and raise the structure to a higher level. And so from that standpoint, that work was continued in terms of the knowledge base. So where I continue to build from is taking the essence of what we, all 3 of us, put together and just continue to evolve it. The problem is, and we can even, I'm pretty sure we get some of the same comments on this, is that SOD basically got shut down by a lot of the national body because they felt like the stuff that we was teaching on was too complex. And so they did not want the elements that the Dallas chapter was bringing into the national format, because they felt it was just too deep for where they was trying to go. Mind you, just
So,
go ahead.
so in other words, National thought the regular membership was too dumb to understand what it was we talking about. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And so the way I saw it was because, and kind of going into what he said about Khaled, and again, it's not a strike at him as a person, but it just has to do with the fact that when you bring somebody into a structure whose foundation is in primary mode of operation is religion in terms of the leadership, and you instantly grow chapters literally overnight from that format, what you're going to have is you're going to have a whole bunch of people that become basically Khalites, or what we would call really just a cult. What ended up happening is the organization became more of a cult because they were following an individual as opposed to building upon the principles of what it means to be a Panther. And so when these principles attempted to get shared across chapters, there was a lot of ego that came into play, and a lot of how dare yous in terms of some of the elders who we would even go as far as to say don't get the essence of what it means to develop growth. The whole thing I continue to speak on is foundational generational advancement, meaning that each generation is supposed to bring something new to the table to enhance what was before them and hand it over to them. It is not supposed to die with the previous generation. There is nothing revolutionary or developing sales structure or theory that will be based upon it dying out with the previous generation. So we saw the Panther 48, the way things were going is we saw ourselves doing what we are supposed to do as Panthers. And unfortunately, too many people fell victim to messiahship, which again, if anybody studied COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program and counterinsurgency period, the idea is to, what they say, prevent the rise of the Black Messiah. What a lot of people don't realize is the applications of that has to do with putting somebody in a position to where they will stunt and suppress the growth of a movement, an organization, and a people, and a way of life. So it's not just quote unquote assassinating a powerful leader, so to speak, but it's also putting someone in position that will stunt the growth of the masses of people in their ability to recognize what need to continually evolve and grow and develop and be revolutionary in its mindset. And so that is what happened to the new Black Panther Party, whether it was intentional or not by some of the people that we encountered resistance from the national. The point being is that's what happened. And so that is why it has been said that the way things basically manifested with Khaled becoming the national chairman was one of the worst things that could have happened to the organization, because it stunted the growth. And not only did it stunt the growth, but kind of going back to what Syke and Brother E brought up, Syke said the mechanism structure that he was going on is over 20 years old, more like 25, 26 years minimum. So when you talk about something like this only being that's something that's 25 years old, and a lot of new Black Panther Party members are hearing this for the first time, mind you, and this was developed over 25 years ago, that tells you how suppressed the information has been. And so with that being said, we're talking about 25 years of suppression. If that is not a powerful COINTEL move, I don't know what is. And so we realize that. And so the thing about going back to what Syke was asking me to do is, again, we saw what needed to be done, and it was just a continual progression of that. Again, it got suppressed nationally. Ultimately, that led to me no longer being a member of the new Black Panther Party. And so a lot of the principles and formats continued to be taught back under the ideology of the Black Panther Party. But as it applies to the new Black Panther Party, the goal was to seep that knowledge in as much as possible and to whatever level possible, because the mission don't stop, and our people need this information. The organizations need this information. People that want to represent the legacy properly need this information. And what needs to be realized is that what you got here is three brothers that basically did what they were supposed to do and build. When you step into the shoes of being an organizer, from a Panther perspective specifically, your goal in your thought process is supposed to be one that is going to add to the foundational structure. But let me say this, first and foremost, you can't add to something that you don't even understand for yourself. One of the biggest problems we have within the movement period is people don't even know what it means to be a Panther, but yet come in and want to change a structure. And this is all across the nation. And this is also leading to the erosion of a structure, because the proper homework, the proper study, the proper growth, just as a person stepping into this, hadn't taken place yet. The experiences that we had during our time back then as a Panther, I would akin to what people say from the hip hop industry when you talk about somebody like Tupac Shakur. He put in more work before 6 a.m. than most rappers did all day long. And because of that, the experience and the growth of what the Panther 48 brought to the table and continues to bring to the table is in that same vein. It's just about raising the bar, but at the same time, making sure everything that is dealt with is done in a position to where it's about adding to a foundational structure that is solid, that is able to take the next level of building. Because what's the point into adding to a foundation that is cracked and destroyed, or a foundation that it needs repair? What's going to happen is the whole thing's going to tumble and fall down. So when we talk about adding to the foundation of something, you must know what it represents first and foremost. This is why it's important to talk about the integrity, because if you're not approaching it with integrity in the first place, no matter what you call yourself bringing to the table, it's not gonna work in the way it's supposed to do in terms of serving the people and being righteous as a Panther. So it's really just that. It's just doing what we're supposed to do, adding what we're supposed to add, and living the lifestyle that we're supposed to live as Panthers, which is when we say, Brother Sykes said, a Panther living a revolutionary life, a way of life that's revolutionary. That's what we're supposed to do. It's the discipline. That discipline means that you're going to study. It means you're going to grow. It means you're gonna sit there and do what I call fussing with yourself. And mind you, when I say that, I learned that concept from African martial arts, Tamarian martial arts. The Grand Master Kalende used to always tell his students to fuss with themselves. And a lot of people don't get what that is. See, oftentimes we bring acronyms to the table, and those acronyms is meant to teach you to ingest and take things to a higher level. So from that standpoint, the acronym had to do with finding unity, seeking solutions. So to fuss with yourself, find unity, seeking solutions, as opposed to us simply covering up symptoms. So the point is the Panther 48 is coming to the table, and we are saying that if you want to be a part of something greater than yourself, you want to represent Panther ideology correctly, you must be willing to fuss with yourself. That fuss with yourself meaning, just like how we talked about earlier in regards to basically going at it with each other hard, we was doing that for the sake of building and making something better for the overall structure. Now, we're not doing dysfunctional mess and fighting at each other, name calling and all that other things that people typically do.
And we wasn't fighting trying to see who was going to be the top dog or who was going to be the leader. None of those conversations ever came up. We was fighting with each other because we was fighting about ideology and what direction is going to lead us toward liberation. I can't remember not one time during those battles anybody's arguing about who going to be the leader. I never remember hearing that. Those were
right.
thoughts that was never on our mind.
That's right. Everything is sincere. Everything is about making sure that we do our revolutionary sacrificing for the people, and to continue to strengthen the format and the ideology as it should grow. And this is for the sake of it growing beyond us, not for it to die with us or to say that we're adding the best that can ever be added. But again, it had to do with putting what we knew to do to the structure and hoping that the next generation would do the same thing. And that's all I got to add on that part.
And I'm gonna say this before we get ready to close, because I know we've been on here a while, but you just brought something that made me think of something. And this is what E love to talk about, that everything doesn't need to necessarily be wrote down or codified. There are certain things we just simply know. And I know we had an understanding. You just said that there's no way that you can come into an organization without understanding what the organization is about. And the key to that is doing your studies. You have to get up under some books, and it's understood that a soldier should read at least 30 minutes a day. A leader should read at least 2 hours. Why? Because if you put yourself in any kind of leadership position, then you have to know what you're talking about. The more information you have, the more of resources you have to pull from when it's time to make decisions. So what you have to do is you got to ask yourself, am I just a soldier? Or am I a leader? Am I a commander? Or am I going to be prepared when I'm called to be a commander? That reading those studies that build it, he just told you, he didn't know he was going to be called to be the MOI. I did not know I was going to be called to be the chief of staff, but the fact is the work had already been done to prepare us to take those duties. And any serious person has to be willing to put in that work. You have to put in that work. Another thing that has to be understood is that you have to put your ego aside. This is not about you. This is not about you being famous. This is not about any of that. This is supposed to be about the ultimate goal of creating liberation for the people. That's what this should be about. And with us all understanding that, when we was having those knockout, drag out arguments, the fact of the matter is everybody was always willing to listen, because we was out, even though we thought we had the answers, we was open to the possibility of somebody else having the answers. That was ironic to me was with David, when we had David on the show. And I remember David, boy, arguing and fighting with Eve over this ideology. But when we had him on the show, he said something very E-ish. You know what I'm saying? He said something that echoed something from almost 30 years ago. He said, I identified as a Cushite. And what you identify as will ultimately predict your actions. And this is basically what he was saying over almost 30 years ago, 25 years ago, when we was having those arguments. And that's why he was steady stressing that we needed to teach culture in those meetings, that culture was necessary, because you can't get a sleeping people to unite with each other. You have to wake those people up. You got to get them an identity. And once they start identifying, then they'll start taking the right actions. David said this 20-some years later on a podcast a couple of weeks ago that we was talking about over 20-some years ago. But that shows that the minds are always open and always gathering those seeds, and that we're always attempting to grow. It's not just about our ego. It's about trying to find the correct solutions. One of the things that we also used to say in those meetings, we used to always admit this. We don't know the answer. I remember David saying it. I remember Aaron saying it. I remember Ward saying, we don't know the answer. And if you think you know the answer, then put it on the table and let's go over it. Let's consider it. We are here because we don't know the answer. We're not here because we think we got it all. We're here in this meeting area having these conversations, sitting at these tables, because we don't know the answers, and we all know we don't know. That's
and it's funny because, and I'm not going to put our business all the way out there, but that it was one of those conversations just like that with David and me in particular that ended up with us getting suspended. All of that played together, and that's real funny to me that that's how diametrically we're opposed. And it's fun because I look back at David and at times, you know, the fact that he moved to Ecuador and all of that, when I first started hearing, because first he was trying to get to Africa, you know, and when I first met this cat was, you know, diehard, I'm in America, this is why this one particular box. And the whole episode that got us suspended was over shaking people's foundation. And then you look back at it, David's whole fucking foundation has morphed, you know, and I can say this old motherfucker, when I met him, grew into this new old motherfucker that he is now, you know, and that's a beautiful thing to see somebody that should have been pretty much crystallized where he was going to be when we met him. And to see that type of mind now done, you know, a complete 180 after these years. You know, this wasn't no young cat. It obviously wasn't no child, wasn't even a teenager or a 20-year-old. This dude had children. I think had grandchildren. This dude was over the hill by, you know, street cat standards. He outlived his usefulness. He should have been right here for the rest of his life. But now he's grown and developed because of our conversations and what he's seen and been inspired by. You know, you mentioned earlier about him getting goosebumps at times when folks would start going back and forth and he get wired up because he could see the growth and development and okay, there's a path for us to get the fuck out of this shit. And I think that's actually, he was getting goosebumps because he could, in his back mind, could see where he is now, which seems to be much happier, you know, but he was able to start at that time, 20 years ago, getting goosebumps. It was because he could see that personal path. Like, yeah, this would be good for the masses. Let me dive in this shit. And it took him to a point where he's, like I said, he seems much happier, much more at peace with his reality. And it is because of that that desire to grow, to develop, to actually submerge yourself in somebody else's issues. That's what I've learned, is that all of this really and truly was for me diving in and putting my personal stuff to the side for whatever time being, and focusing on the issues of a greater picture, to humble oneself to that. And because it's easy to humble yourself to somebody like Khaled or Malcolm. You're supposed to, you know, when they walk into a room, I guess with Malcolm, because obviously I never got to do it, but with Khaled, when he would walk into a room, there was a certain, you know, he had that magnetism. He had that I'm here type of presence. That's easy to humble yourself to that. With true humility is humbling yourself to somebody that's homeless, humbling yourself to a child, humbling yourself to somebody that has less than you, and bowing yourself down to them. You know, like when one of the things we used to do, we did it, I think a couple of times, was during the Merry Mess, during that time of year that we're coming up on now, was I know my job at the time, our Christmas bonus was a fucking turkey. They would give us a turkey, no money, just a turkey. Fine, whatever. So I took that turkey to some of the sisters in the party and had them fried up and whatnot. And we made these little sack lunches, you know, put some chips, they make sandwiches out of it, put a little bag of chips and a little drink in there with it, and go out and hand it out to the folks and let folks know. And so humbling yourself to somebody who's in that situation, not doing it as if you think you're better than them. Here you go, I'm doing my, you know, this is my charity work. That's not what it was. It was us humbling and attempting to reach out and make a connection and show a sincere understanding and sense of empathy for the situation that our people were in. If it was the co-op that we attempted to get working at one point, linking, you know, people's need to have a free bag of groceries at least one day a week to their need to be fed mentally, you know, and making that class a requirement to get the bag of food. You know, the free books that we set up on the outside of the headquarters, so folks decided they, you know, wanted to read or some shit, they could come, grab a book, take it home, sit down, no charge, just take the book. It's yours. That's what it's here for. So, you know, different approaches like that, I know had the effect of allowing us to do more internal searching and that fussing with oneself. Because again, as African people, we define ourselves through one another. And when we define ourselves at our lowest level and we're able to reach down to those levels by bending over and giving someone some free food to attempt to affect their situation, we're allowing us to see the better part of ourselves and to feed into that. You know, see that better part of ourselves at our lower state. So yeah, that's a you know, nobody asked me what I got out of it, but you know, fuck it, that's what I got out of it. I don't care.
Hey, let me say this real quick also. And one thing I do have to say to the younger generation of Panthers, and this has a lot to do with just where we find ourselves through the conditions of today's time through technology, is that throughout all of our sparring sessions, what I would refer to, that we did with each other in order to continue to constantly refine the direction and the growth of the organization, we didn't quit. You don't quit. We have to get out of the mindset of when things get hard, you quit. Got to get away from it. That's not revolutionary at all. That's counter-revolutionary. And it's a contradiction to the concept of struggle. It's for at any point for us to quit our post. I mean, that's general order. Don't quit your post. So I just want to say that to the younger generations, is that we have to be willing to struggle with one another, especially as it applies to the development of the ideology of the organization. That's
True
it.
indeed. True indeed. True indeed. And with that, we're going to close out. If nobody else has anything to say in closing, we're going to close out. I think once again, we've given a lot of information. We've given, I don't know what he's doing over there. We've given a lot of information. This is probably a video that you should watch with your notebooks and your pens out. Take some notes, because this was a class. This wasn't just a conversation. This was actually a class. And we were just telling y'all where we was at. And if you look at it, you got to really look at this video. Because not only are we telling you where we was at over 20 years ago in our thinking and the direction we was taking the party, we're also telling you how you're supposed to conduct yourself, how you're supposed to operate as a true revolutionary and community activist. Even in the suspended state, E&I was still building. Even in the suspended state, and even though we were suspended, war was still coming around us, checking on where our building was going, seeing where. And if you look back at it, and we knew but didn't really know. But I think I could safely say that war always knew he was gonna bring us back. He was giving us the time to get to where we needed to be at, so that when we come back, we could actually take the roles that we was expected to play when we came back into the fold, into the organization. Because I don't think war saw what Khaled's induction into the party we're going to end up doing to the organization. But I think war knew that him, David, Aaron, all of them were going to have to take national positions, and that local chapter was going to basically be left for me and E to direct. Because even war ended up being given a regional position. And I think war could actually see that and understand that. But the point I'm making is that this work is one that you do every single day. There's not a day, even when I went on my vacation for that 17 years, I still believed that I had work that needed to be done. So I was still building and stuff. And I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna get ready to close, even though I couldn't do it under the Panther Party. Because in prison, the Black Panther Party is what they call a security threat group. That's what it's called. And so you have to kind of hide your membership into the Panther Party. I was, for 16 years, I was on the security threat group list as a leader in the Black Panther Party. And what that does to you in that situation is, every time you come off for parole, they give you sentences of why they denied you. One of those sentences was that I was an active member of a security threat group. It wasn't until I actually sat down with a pretty cool, fairly cool, in comparison, STG officer, that's what they call them, let's say, gang organization officer. But I sat down with him and I asked to be removed off the security threat list for two reasons I gave him. He told me that removing me off the list created a danger for the prison, because they have you on this list so that if any situation, let's say, for example, Panthers jump on somebody on this particular unit, they're able to pull this list up on the computer. There you are, and they know who to go to, who to deal with, who to talk to, who to lock up. They know who to deal with on that. So it's a threat to the security to take you off the list as a person of quote unquote interest. And I explained to him two basic things. One, I was in a region that wasn't highly dominated by blacks. Blacks in Texas pretty much run the units in the southern region. If you're on the west region, blacks don't have a lot of power there. That's a more Latin region. Mexicans pretty much control that region. And I explained that to him. Two, I showed him how, I said, look at my record. I have not been the cause of any kind of trouble since I've been here. Whenever my name comes up, it's always on education, organizing, building. Look at what I do. And he told me this. He told me, he said, I'm gonna do something for you. He said, I'm not gonna remove you from the list. He said, but I'm gonna change your status. You always been considered active. He said, I'm gonna put you on monitor. And I asked him, what does that mean? He said, what that means is parole won't be able to see it. Only I can see it. Only another STG officer will see it. So we got you on monitor, not active. Active, anytime they pull your file, they see it. Active Black Panther. But now nobody else will be able to see it but me. And true story. Next time I saw parole, I made it. Soon as he changed my status, I made it. So my point is, I'm getting at is that this is work, and that there are things that's going to come along with this work. There are sufferings that's going to come along with this work, and you got to be prepared to do the work. And you got to do some reading. That's one of the things he always stressed, even back in the day to even now. You got to do some reading. You have to do some reading, especially if you're going to be in any kind of position of command. You got to know what the hell you're talking about, because you're responsible for the life of other people. You're responsible for their life, and you're responsible for their thought process. You have to do some reading. Don't seek no position. Don't seek national, local, anything if you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You got to sit down and do you some reading. And with that, E, you look like you're on your chair. You about to say something?
No, I was just going to say I forgive you. I'm finally at this point in my life I can forgive you, because you left. And when you left and went on vacation, you left me, because, it was basically me and you against the party most of the time. So when you left all of this shit on my shoulders to try to fight War, Aaron, David, and every motherfucker in the goddamn in the chapter. I had to try to fight them motherfuckers on my own. So, but it's okay. I forgive you. We can move on with our lives.
And with that, we're gonna bring it to a close. Remember, anybody wants some more of this information, I'm gonna leave Brother Wars' email address in the description box. Feel free to contact the brother. This is his life. He don't have nothing else to do but
nothing.
This. So contact the brother, and he'll give you this information. Peace and power. What is that, brother?
It's my silver. I don't.